I proceed with introductions?
Yes, you may.
My name is Tess Orr, Tessorr. I will be giving the opening statement, the direct examination of Taylor Perkins, and the cross-examination of Alex Cifuentes.
My name is Nicholas Huffman, Huffman. I will be conducting the direct of Kyle Kuzak and the cross of Blake Van Owen.
My name is Albert Booth, BOOTH. I'll be conducting the direct of Detective Jordan Markowitz and the cross of Avery Becker, and I'll be delivering the prosecution closing.
May our witnesses introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
I am Anders Griffin, GRIFFIN, and I am Kyle Kuzak.
My name is McKinley Baum. Will you mute that? My name is McKinley Baum, BAUM, and I'll be playing Detective Markowitz.
Good morning. My name is Juliet Berry, BERRY, and I will be playing Alex Cifuentes.
All right, and would the defense introduce counsel and then the defendant and witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Johnny Flanagan, and I will be giving the opening statement for the defense and conducting the direct examination of Taylor Perkins and the cross-examination of Alex Cifuentes.
My name is Asher Goldberg, and I will be conducting the cross-examination of Detective Markowitz and the direct examination of Blake Van Owen.
My name is Connor Flamenco. I'll be conducting the direct examination of Avery Becker and the cross-examination of Kyle Kuzak, as well as the closing statement for the defense.
May our witnesses introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Bryn Berry, and I am Avery Becker. My name is Ellie Burton, and I am Taylor Perkins.
My name is Joel Doherty, and I am Professor Blake Van Owen.
Okay. The next issue, I believe, is that we need to have the the timekeepers introduce themselves for the prosecution and the defense.
Your Honor, our attorneys actually will be timekeeping for each other.
All right. Is that true for the defense as well?
Our witnesses will be acting as the timekeepers.
Okay. All right. All right. So the next issue is, I believe, the swearing in of all parties. And bear with me a second. Been a chaotic time here recently, so I apologize for that. Team members, please raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and the rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
And all of you have stated in the affirmative?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, then witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
And everyone has answered in the affirmative?
Yes.
All right, and then for all others attending, gallery members, including teachers and attorney coaches, family members and friends, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to represent yourselves as a positive role model and to behave in a manner that exemplifies the ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and I'm assuming that that is all in the affirmative. And scoring panelists, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Now that everyone has been introduced, is there any conflict that anyone wishes to raise with respect to the parties or panelists or witnesses or the judge? Hearing none, I will assume that there is no objection. Do the prosecution have any preliminary matters before we begin the trial?
Yes, Your Honor. Pursuant to Rule 4.6, we would like to introduce the stipulations to the court. The stipulations have already been agreed upon by the prosecution and the defense.
And I'm assuming the defense, since they've stipulated to it, do not object. Is that correct?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. Then those will be deemed admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Any other preliminary matters for the people?
Not for the prosecution, Your Honor.
Okay. Any preliminary matters for the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Then I believe we're ready for opening statements.
May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
May it please the court. Thank you, Your Honor, members of the jury, and opposing counsel. Mackenzie Brackham was the beloved coach of the Colorado High School mock trial team, the mock trial team that Avery Becker was on. And now we are going through this devastating loss because of Avery Becker. On March 6, 2020, the defendant decided to go into Mackenzie Brackman's house while she thought he was at work to break in and vandalize Mr. Brackman's home. Which, let's not forget that the defendant already vandalized Mr. Brackman's property once. The defendant walked into Mr. Brackman's house, and in defense, Mr. Brackman grabbed a knife. The very knife that the defendant stabbed in Mr. Brackman's back. The defendant knowingly broke into and remained inside Mr. Brackman's home, committing second-degree burglary. And whether or not it was intended, the murder of Mackenzie Brackman was caused by the defendant. Today, you will hear from Detective Jordan Markowitz, a detective who works for the Denver Police Department and has specialized training with cell phones and cell phone tower recovery. Alex Cifuentes, who received texts the day of detailing the defendant's crime. And finally, you will hear from Kyle Kuzak, who is a crime scene recovery specialist. The prosecution believes that Mr. Brackman's murder, the prosecution believes that Mr. Brackman's murder was caused by Avery Becker. And we believe that Avery Becker needs to be put away for her actions. When you are called back for deliberation, you will find the prosecution met the burden of proof. And we can finally put Avery Becker away for all the damage that she caused, not only to the victim's family, but to the mock trial team. Thank you again, Your Honor, members of the jury, and opposing counsel.
Does the defense wish to make an opening statement at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
May it please the court. Good morning, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Johnny Flanagan, and I, along with my colleagues, represent Ms. Avery Becker and her defense. Ms. Becker stands here today falsely accused for the crime of murder. Make no mistake, there has been a murder and someone out there did it, but Ms. Becker is not that person. When the prosecution presents their evidence, you will find that it is all circumstantial and will not meet the burden of proof necessary to prove without any reasonable doubt that Ms. Becker is guilty. As J.K. Rowling said, always the innocent are the first victims. So it has been for ages past, and so it is now. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Ms. Becker is one such innocent victim, a victim of a sloppy police department who would rather incarcerate an innocent civilian quickly than take the time to do their job correctly and catch the actual killer. At the end of this trial, we will ask that you render my client not guilty which is the only correct verdict for this case. Members of the jury, today you'll hear from 6 witnesses. 3 will attempt to prove without a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker is guilty of what she is accused, a task they will not be able to fulfill with the evidence they can provide. And 3 will testify to the innocence of Avery Becker and the sloppiness of the police department. You will hear that Detective Markowitz falls short of completing an accurate investigation and that his police work was sloppy at best. From Kyle Kuzak, you will hear that even he admits that he would prefer more physical evidence on the scene of the crime. From Alex Cifuentes, you will hear that Avery Becker sent messages to her on a phone that Avery did not even have in her possession. Following the prosecution's witnesses, you will hear from Avery Becker. You will hear from Ms. Becker that the evidence brought forth by the prosecution is inadequate to prove without reasonable doubt that she was in any way involved with the murder of Mr. Brackman, and that she not only has an alibi, but also has a witness to confirm that her alibi is honest. Our second witness will be Taylor Perkins. She will testify that on the day of the murder, she was with her best friend, Avery Becker, searching for Avery's phone far away from the scene of the crime. Lastly, our third witness will be Blake Van Owen, a private investigator, professor, and expert in police practices. He will illuminate the flaws and inconsistencies of the prosecution and help to prove that not only is Ms. Becker innocent, but the idea of prosecuting her as guilty is laughable. The inadequate evidence that will be provided by the prosecution and the honesty and sincerity from the defense should be reason enough to prove the innocence of Ms. Becker. At the conclusion of this trial, the defense will ask that you find our client not guilty. The prosecution will not be able to provide the burden of proof necessary to prove without reasonable doubt that our client is guilty. A verdict of guilty would not only be an injustice, but it would also be a travesty and a tragic failing of the American justice system. Thank you.
Right. People wish to call their first witness.
Your Honor, may I have a few moments to change my name?
I feel your pain.
Your Honor, may I bring up Detective Jordan Markowitz?
Yes.
Would you please introduce yourself to the court?
My name is Jordan Markowitz. That is Markowi.
You are muted.
How much did you hear? I'm sorry.
I believe I heard the last bit of you spelling your name.
And I'm a homicide detective with the Denver Police Department.
How did you get your law enforcement education?
I completed a 3-day training course at the American Academy of Law Enforcement.
And how long have you been with the law department?
About 13 years.
And in about how many cases have you obtained and interpreted cell tower data in?
Over 50 cases.
And about how many cell phones have you downloaded the contents of? I believe you're muted again.
Hundreds.
Your Honor, I would like to admit Detective Jordan Markowitz as an expert in homicide investigation with an emphasis on cell phone and cell tower data recovery.
Any objection?
Sorry, could opposing counsel repeat the fields that they are admitting as an expert in?
Counsel, would you repeat that?
Yes. As an expert in homicide investigation with an emphasis on cell phone and cell tower data recovery.
Okay. Your Honor, I object to the witness being entered as an expert in homicide investigation due to lack of foundation.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I think there was testimony as to her years of experience, which would comply with the rule. You may proceed, and she may testify as an expert witness in the areas you identified.
Okay. So how did you hear about the case?
I was called in. I was hired as the defense. The defense detective.
And when you went to the scene, what did you observe?
There was a man laying face down with a stab wound in his back, and he had a mock trial shirt on.
With this mock trial, hearing about the mock trial, what did you do?
Well, I got a list of all the students that were in the mock trial team that he coached, and I reached out to Avery Becker and Alex Fuentes.
And were they helpful?
I met with Alex Fuentes, and he gave me a lot of really great information. I actually got screenshots of the messages between him and Avery Becker, and it was the biggest break in my case. But I couldn't communicate with Avery Becker because his lawyer said all further communications had to go through her.
Your Honor, may I bring permission to bring up the screenshots of the text?
You may.
Thank you. A moment. Are these the texts?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would like to admit exhibit 14 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, to lack of foundation.
Your response?
Your Honor, I believe I laid down an adequate foundation when Markowitz identified these as the texts that were sent, as the screenshots of the text sent to Alex Fuentes.
Any reply?
I stand by my objection.
Objections overruled.
Detective, would you please read? Would you please read the bottom two texts shown here?
From both Avery Becker and Alex Fuentes?
No, sorry, the bottom two gray texts.
I'm gonna wait until he's at work, then break in and trash it. That'll show him.
And then, sorry, should have had you read this one first. Then the third one up from the bottom.
Well, if he's still upset about his car, then he's gonna be really upset when he sees what I do to his house.
So, what did you get from this?
Well, I understood that there was obviously an intention to break in and that he wanted to cause disruption. He was very angry at Coach Brackman. He had the motive.
Thank you. Now, what did you do with Avery Becker?
Well, I tried to reach out to him, but his lawyer said that he had lost his phone and that all further communications would have to go through her.
And was Avery at school on the day of the murder?
No, he was gone all day.
Did you try to find out where he was?
I tracked his cell phone using my cellular recovery experience.
Your permission to bring up exhibits 15 and 16?
You may.
Thank you. Are these those maps?
Yes, they are.
And would you please explain what is going on in this map?
Well, in the upper corner, we can see Brackman's house Becker's house. And in the lower corner, we can see Brackman's house. And this shows the most likely route from the two destinations. And it shows that the text messages and calls he was receiving at the time of the murder directly lined up with the cell towers.
Objection. This exhibit has not yet been admitted into evidence. I object to the witness testifying about it without it being admitted.
I'm going to sustain the objection. Want to lay the foundation and seek to have it admitted.
Okay. Detective Markowitz, so just to clarify, are these the maps that you saw of the cell towers and Becker's phone?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would like to admit these maps into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. I object to Exhibit 16 on the basis of hearsay.
Response to hearsay?
Your Honor, this was simply a tool that Detective Markowitz used in the course of her investigation of this murder.
Reply?
While that is true, the drawn-in lines are a statement made by the detective.
I'm sorry, you cut out. Statement made by?
An out-of-court statement made by the detective.
I'm going to overrule the objection. The detective is in the courtroom and can be cross-examined. So 15 and 16 are admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, so what are these lines?
This shows the most likely destination from Becker's house to Brackman's house, and that Avery Becker was receiving text messages and phone calls that connected to the cell towers along that route at the time of the murder.
So what conclusion did you get from this?
That Avery Becker drove from his house to Mackenzie Brackman's house with the intention to disrupt his home.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Detective Markowitz, you claim pictures of blood drops and spatters were taken at the crime scene, correct?
Yes.
But you lost those pictures, correct?
Yes, they were corrupted.
And you only had one copy of those photos, correct?
That is correct.
Is it not a good idea to take multiple copies of a picture in case one of them is lost?
It's a fair idea. I just didn't this time. I didn't consider it.
And no one saw those pictures other than you, correct?
That is correct.
Now, you said in your statement that the fact that Brackman did criminal defense work raised the specter that this could be the work of a disgruntled ex-client, correct?
It's possible.
Did you ever, yes or no, investigate this theory?
No.
And did you ever personally view the texts in Exhibit 14?
I could not. He did not have his phone.
So can you say with absolute certainty that those texts were authentic and not faked?
No.
And you said in your statement that a cell phone does not always connect to the nearest cell phone tower, correct?
Not always, but most frequently.
And you also said that you do not absolutely know that Becker was on the path to Brackman's house, correct?
Not with absolute certainty.
And then you state that it is absolutely clear that Avery Becker went to Mackenzie Brackman's house on the murder, correct?
The map shows that he drove that way.
Is it possible for it to be absolutely clear if you do not absolutely know that Avery Becker killed Mackenzie Brackman?
No.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, just Detective, could you please briefly sum up everything about this case that you can say with reasonable scientific certainty?
Avery Becker's phone connected to the cell towers, the 3 cell towers directly leading to Mackenzie Brackman's house at the time of the murder and on the day. He had the motive to come in and disrupt Brackman's home. And in the end, there was a scuffle and Mackenzie Brackman was murdered because of Avery Becker.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. If there's to be any recross, you need to tell me why you would need that.
No recross, Your Honor.
All right. Then next witness for the prosecution. May I inquire?
Your Honor, the prosecution would like to call Alex Cifuentes to the stand.
All right. And you should change your name too.
Yes, I will be doing that. Thank you.
And Your Honor, could the witness change their name too so I can see? Thanks.
Oh, that's a good point.
All right. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Will you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Yes. Alex Cifuentes, Sfuentes.
Where do you currently go to school?
I currently go to Colorado High School.
All right. And what grade are you in?
I'm a senior.
Were you involved in any extracurricular activities?
Yes, I did mock trial.
How long were you on the mock trial team?
I started my freshman year.
Who else was on your mock trial team?
Both Alex Cifuentes and Taylor Perkins were on the mock trial team.
I'm sorry, Alex Cifuentes?
Sorry, Avery Becker and Taylor Perkins.
Thank you. What was yours and the defendant's relationship like?
I consider us to be very good friends.
And what was the defendant like as a team member?
He did leave our team in anxiety because of the fact that he would not prepare, yet he was also a very, very good at coming up with things on the fly.
And how did this behavior affect the team?
We were kind of scared sometimes because we didn't know, because he wasn't really prepared and he wouldn't follow the script.
Do you recall a series of events between the defendant and Mr. Brackman over the past year?
Yes. They would argue about him showing up late and not being prepared all the time.
And would you elaborate on what happened before your regional tournament last year?
Yes. Avery showed up late again, and he was very unprepared. And Coach Brackman ended up kicking her off the team.
How long was Avery on the B team?
He was not on the B team very long because Taylor stepped down so that he could get put back on the. So he ended up getting put back on the A team.
How did you feel after the defendant was let back on the A team?
A lot of us were really frustrated, but yeah, a lot of us were really frustrated.
Okay. And can you elaborate on what happened after your regional tournament?
Yes. Coach Brackman was telling Avery about how she didn't deserve the awards she won because she didn't follow the script. And Avery got super mad, and Coach ended up kicking her off the team.
Did Avery ever try and contact you after she was kicked off the team?
Yes, she contacted me and told me that, and asked me if I could talk to Mr. Brackman about letting her back on the team.
And did Mr. Brackman let her back on the team?
No, he wouldn't step down.
Did you see the defendant after that?
Yes, I did, at the Fry Shack on March 5th.
Did you talk to her while at the Fry Shack?
Yes, I talked to her about how frustrated, how sad I was that she wasn't let back on the team, and she even let me play a new game on her phone.
And on the day of March 6th, can you tell me what happened at mock trial practice?
Yes, we showed up and Mr. Brackman wasn't there, which was really unusual. And we called and texted him and he didn't respond. So after 15 minutes, we went back. About 15 minutes, we went to the Fry Shack.
And do you have a cell phone?
Yes, I do.
And do you have the defendant's phone number?
Yes, I do.
What is it labeled as in your phone?
Avery Becker.
And when you get a call from the defendant, what does it come up as?
Avery Becker.
On the day of March 6th, you had, did Avery contact you?
The day of March 6th?
Yes.
Yes.
And is this the conversation that you had with the defendant?
Yes.
Would you please read the first, will you specify which the gray bubbles are and which the green bubbles are?
Yes. The gray bubbles are Avery and the green bubbles are me.
All right, thank you. Would you please read the third gray bubble from the bottom?
The one that starts with come?
I'm sorry?
The one that starts with well?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Well, if he's still upset about his car, then he's going to be really upset when he sees what I do to his house.
All right, and then will you please read the next two gray bubbles?
Yes. I'm going to wait until he's at work, then break in and trash it. That'll show him.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Thank you. Is it correct that you saw Avery Becker at the Fry Shack?
Yes.
And it is also correct that you used Avery Becker's phone on that day, correct?
Yes. I played a game on his phone.
And it's also correct that you were the last known person to use his phone, or her phone, excuse me, before it went missing, correct?
I believe that is correct, but I am not sure.
And do you acknowledge that it is relatively easy to fake text messages?
I believe so.
And it is correct that you do not currently have the phone with the alleged text messages sent to them in your possession.
No, I traded it out for a new phone.
And it's also correct that you never showed the police a physical phone with those text messages, correct?
I sent screenshots to Detective Markowitz.
Is it also correct that you do not know where the phone currently is now?
This is correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. May I have a brief moment to confer with my co-counsel?
You may.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may.
Miss Cifuentes, can you be certain that you were the last person to use the defendant's phone that night?
No, I can't be certain, but no, I can't be certain.
All right, and then again, just for clarification, can you clarify for me who the gray bubbles are and who the green bubbles are in this text message thread?
The gray bubbles are Avery and the green bubbles are me.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Again, recross needs to be a compelling reason, but is there any request for recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
All right, then people may call their next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Brief moment to change my name.
Certainly.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Prosecution would like to bring Kyle Kuzak to the stand, please.
I'm assuming he's there. You may inquire.
May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Please state your first and spell your last for the court.
Kyle Kuzak, Kuzak.
And what do you do for a living, Mr. Kuzak?
I am a certified Colorado Bureau of Investigation certified crime scene reconstruction investigator, or CSR for short.
How long have you worked as an investigator?
19 years.
What do you do as an investigator?
I go into crime scenes and I use a 5-step process to reconstruct the crime and, find out what happened.
Your Honor, I would like to admit this witness as an expert in crime scene reconstruction and investigation.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. I do not believe they've laid proper foundation in order for Mr. Kuzak to be admitted as an expert.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I think he's established that he's worked in this field 19 years. And based on his training and experience, he may testify as an expert in crime scene reconstruction and investigation. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. So let's go to the event we are here for. Did you visit the crime scene?
Yes.
Now, are you a police officer?
No, I'm simply a civilian employee of the Denver Police Department.
Okay, good. And have you read the police reports?
I have.
Did you draw a flow chart for this?
I have.
Okay, Your Honor, permission to show witness and opposing counsel Exhibit 17.
Yes, you may.
Mr. Kuzak, can you tell me what this is?
This is the chart that I have drawn relating evidence and witnesses.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to admit this exhibit in as evidence.
Any objection to the admission of Exhibit 17?
I object to the foundation of this exhibit.
Response?
Your Honor, I laid the foundation by asking him if he knew what it was and asking him what he has reason for with this.
Do you wish to reply?
I stand by my objection.
Objections overruled. 17 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. And So can you explain to me what this provides?
This provides evidence as to where witnesses claim they were at each time and what relations they have to the scene of the crime.
So is there personal relationships in this?
Yes, there is a relationship between the defendant, Mr. Becker, and his best friend, and her best friend, Taylor.
Thank you. Your Honor, permission to show the witness and the co-counsel exhibit number 12.
You may.
Do you know what this exhibit is?
Yes, this is the intruder entering Brackman's house.
Your Honor, may I enter exhibit 12 into evidence?
Any objection?
Yes, I do not believe they've laid foundation for this exhibit.
I would ask that you lay a little bit additional foundation.
Yes, Your Honor. Have you personally looked at the videos?
Yes, I have.
Okay, now, Your Honor, may I enter exhibit 12 into evidence?
Any objection?
I stand by my objection.
The objection's overruled. Exhibit 12 is admitted.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I play the video?
Yes, you may.
And what can you tell me by that video?
Well, you can see an intruder with a very average height and build entering the building, fully clothed with gloves, mask, and a coat on.
And no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, may I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Good morning, Mr. Kuzak. You visited the scene of Mackenzie Brackman's death, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you arrived at that scene after it had been processed by the crime lab, isn't that right?
Yes.
So you also said some of the digital files of photographs from the crime scene had become partially corrupted before or after you had reviewed them for analysis, isn't that right?
That is correct.
So they are at this point no longer available to anyone, is that right?
Yes, no one can see them.
And you would also admit that you had personally wished that there was more physical evidence at the crime scene, wouldn't you?
There could have been a few more spots of evidence.
So with all that information, and you not having the wanted amount of physical evidence, you cannot make a recreation of all the events of that day, can you?
I can't make a perfect recreation, but I can make a very close one.
But yes or no, you cannot recreate all of the events that happened on the crime scene, can you?
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the objection?
Asked and answered.
Overruled. Witness can answer.
Huh?
You may answer.
No, I cannot.
And there were no fingerprints or DNA samples that could be collected from the intruder. Were there?
There were no fingerprints.
And in your opinion, do you think that there could be other people with possible similar height and builds as the defendant, Avery Becker?
There could be, but they don't have the same problems with Coach Brackman as Avery does.
But it is possible that there could be people with similar size.
It is a possibility.
So with the intruder being fully clothed and no way to really identify who they are, there's no way that you can be sure that the intruder was Avery Becker, can you?
There is no way I can be sure.
Are you familiar with Professor Van Owen?
I am familiar.
And you agree that some of Professor Van Owen's conclusions are outside of your area of expertise, right?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I please show the opposing counsel and your copy of Exhibit 17?
Yes, you may.
Zach, you recognize this exhibit, right?
Yes,
And you agreed that you stand by all the statements that you made in this exhibit.
I do stand by every statement made.
So you still stand by the statement that you made, quote, about Avery Becker saying that, quote, expressed remorse about prior involvement with victim on CHS, correct?
Yes,
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Mr. Kuzak, are you able to match the general height and build of the defendant that approached the victim's door?
I am.
Can you tell me if the general height and build matches the defendant, Avery Becker?
I can.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. Again, any compelling need for redirect? I'm sorry, recross?
No, Your Honor, no recross.
All right. Then I believe the people rest. Is that my understanding?
No, Your Honor. No prosecution rests.
Okay. Defense wish to call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Avery Becker to the stand.
All right.
May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Good morning. Please state your name and spell your last for the court.
Avery Becker, Beckerer.
And what is it that you were here for today?
I'm here because I was wrongly accused of killing my mock trial coach, Mackenzie Brackman.
So do you participate in mock trial?
Yes, I love mock trial.
And how long have you been on the team for?
4 years.
So are you passionate about mock trial?
Yes, very passionate.
Would you even say that you're skilled at mock trial?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely skilled. I'm very good at mock trial.
So how would you describe the teaching style of your coach, Mr. Brackman?
Mr. Brackman he loved to have everything his own way. He was very methodical about his way of teaching. He liked to have all of our questions written out, all of our openings, all of our closings. He went over all of them and he wrote over all of them. I don't know. He just liked having everything his way. And I don't know, he was very strict. And yeah.
So in contrast with his style of teaching, how did that compare with your style of working?
My style of working is very go with the flow. So it's like pretty much opposite of Mr. Brackman's. So it really caused conflict because I need more freedom.
Going after that, how's your relationship with your coach?
Because of that, we didn't have a best relationship.
And from your experience, how would you describe his personality?
Mr. Brackman, I'd say he was a bit egotistical. He was very full of himself and he tended to get angry more often than he should have.
And despite this, what do you think of Brackman as a coach?
Mr. Brackman, I'd say he made our team competitive. I think he was the one who got us to state. He had some really good pointers for the people who needed it. He made us competitive.
So now let's talk about the incident with Brackman's car. What happened with that?
So the practice after regionals, I had just won 2 awards, the best closing and the best attorney award at regionals. And so I was feeling pretty good about myself and I was about to write how I did on the board. And so I was holding an Excel marker and Mr. Brackman came over to me and he started telling me about how horrible it was that I was not prepared, and he got on me again and again. And I was like, oh my goodness, why are you getting me on me again? It's so frustrating. And so I got mad and I stormed out and I was still holding that what I thought was an Excel marker. And I went to his car and I wrote worst attorney award across the hood. I feel so bad. I promise I didn't realize it was a permanent marker. I thought it was a dry erase marker. I shouldn't have done it though.
So going off this idea that you felt bad, did you ever try to make up for your actions and how did you try to make it up?
I tried so hard. I wanted so bad to get back on the team and to make up. I wanted to talk to Mr. Brackman in person, so I tried to go to his office, but his secretary told me she was busy. He was busy, so I couldn't do that. And so I texted him. I told him how sorry I was. I offered to get a summer job to get his car repainted. I offered to scrub his car. I tried everything.
Now let's talk about Alex Cifuentes. Do you know who Alex Fuentes is?
Yes.
Who are they?
Alex Fuentes is a fellow mock show member who likes to say that we're friends, but we're not.
So what is your relationship with Alex based off of this?
I'd say we're rivals. Alex voted me off the team so he could get the best attorney award at state. So I think, yeah, we're kind of rivals.
So do you ever text Alex Cifuentes?
No, Alex is the last person I text for anything.
What happened at the Fry Shack on the day of March 5th, 2020?
Fry Shack is a place a lot of CHS students go for just to hang out. And so I went there that night, the night before, on the 5th of March. And Taylor and I were playing on our friends, and Alex was there. And so, yeah, we were just hanging out.
So when was the last time you remember having your phone on the day of March?
The last time I remember having my phone would be at the Fry Shack.
So what did you do after you realized that you had lost your phone?
The next day, when I did realize I lost my phone, Taylor and I skipped the day of school to go look for it. And we called it a lot of times from the mall because we went to the mall after the Fry Shack. And from the Fry Shack, we spent the day looking for it.
So are you familiar with Blair Rollins?
Yes, kind of, yeah.
How do you describe him?
Blair Rollins is a friend of Alex's, and she kind of has a similar body type and build to me.
And do you think that you're the only person with the general size and build?
Definitely not. A lot of people have my same build.
So what else do you know about this character, Blair Rollins?
Blair was the one person who hated Brackman more than I did. Brackman lost a case that got Blair's dad sent to prison, and now Blair is missing. I think that's pretty suspicious.
So before his death, have you ever visited Mr. Brackman's residency?
No, I didn't even know where he lived.
And finally, did you commit the murder of your coach, Mackenzie Brackman?
No, I would never.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed?
You may.
Thank you. Some of this will be repeating what happened as part of the direct. So start with your relationship with Coach Brackman. You two didn't get along very well, correct?
No, we didn't. Personalities just didn't really fit.
You would even go as far as to say, yes or no, you would even go so far as to say you thoroughly disliked him, correct?
Mr. Brackman had his good parts. I appreciated how he made our team competitive, and he had his good parts, but he also had his bad parts.
And like you said, there were many conflicts, correct?
Yes.
From anger, correct?
From frustration, and yeah.
Were you ever frustrated enough, or did you ever dislike him enough to vandalize his property?
No, I would never.
Really? But you say in your statement that you vandalized his car. Is his car not his property?
I did not. I believed that by drawing on his car, I thought it was an extra marker, so it would not have been permanent. It should have wiped right off, and that was my intention.
But you still intended to vandalize the car, correct?
To pull a prank that would have scared him, but it would have been easy to fix.
Now, you know that writing with a dry erase marker is easily erasable on a whiteboard, but you couldn't be sure if it would be the same with a car, correct?
Objection, this is outside the scope of my witness's testimony.
Your response?
Your Honor, this is easily inferable that not everyone would know that a dry erase marker would be the same on a car as a whiteboard, which is what my question is asking.
A reply?
I mean, it's still outside the testimony of my witness, so I stand by my objection.
I'm going to overrule the objection. You can answer.
Can you ask the question again?
Yeah. So you know that writing on a whiteboard with a dry erase marker is easily erasable, but you didn't know it was the same with the car, correct?
I assumed it was.
Now, despite whether or not you still intended to, did you intend, and you didn't, you intended to damage the car, correct?
No, I did not intend to damage the car. I intended to pull a prank.
But riding on a car is vandalism, is it not?
If it is permanent, it would be vandalism, but it was not intentionally permanent.
But vandalism is just an intent to cause damage to a car, correct?
Objection outside the scope of my witness. I don't think that she is able to list the definition of what vandalism is, as it is not in her witness testimony.
Your response?
Your Honor, may I confer with co-counsel?
Yes.
Your Honor, may my opposing counsel please repeat the objection?
Would you repeat the objection?
My objection was on my witness is not able to define the definition of vandalism, therefore cannot testify to the question of asked.
Your Honor, can I have another brief moment to confer with co-counsel?
Sure.
So vandalism is still stripped down to its basics. It is causing damage to someone else's property, correct?
Is that directed at me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I'm still interested. Your direction. Your Honor, vandalism is, while it is different for everyone, it is still, it still has the basic idea.
Well, I think she answered that yes. So I think you should move on.
Okay. And did you know how much how much damage writing on a car does, correct?
If it was a permanent marker, yes.
But you admitted that you didn't know that it was the same with if you did admit that you didn't know how much damage a dry erase marker would do, correct?
Objection answer, asking and answered.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
All right. And just to clarify, why were you riding on Brackman's car?
I was riding his car because I was frustrated and I was not thinking properly. And I intended to.
You were frustrated, yes?
I was frustrated, yes.
And you got frustrated when Brackman wouldn't see you, correct? To apologize?
I was a little offended. I don't think I was frustrated.
And offense still causes similar feelings to frustration, yes?
I wanted to get back on the team. That was my goal. Can you?
But you just said that you were offended when Brackman wouldn't see you, correct?
Yes.
And you were offended when you rode on the car, correct?
I wasn't offended when I got on the car. I felt horrible when I got on the car and I tried my best to make it up.
But when you wrote, you say that you were, so you, in your statement, you seem pretty annoyed because you say the The only thing nice Brackman said about you was that you were relying on your good looks, correct?
Yes.
And that would make you even more frustrated that that is the only thing that he said about you. That's good.
My witness never made testimony to the question that was asked.
So I'm sorry, the argument or the objection is that it's beyond the scope?
Yes, Your Honor.
Response?
May I have a brief moment, Your Honor?
You may.
No response, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection. I think it's beyond the scope.
Would you agree that trashing a house is vandalism, just like how riding someone on someone's car is vandalism?
I would agree.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Yes, very briefly, direct. So, Ms. Becker, were you in the sound of mind when you decided to ride with Expo, or what you thought was Expo marker on Coach Brackman's car?
I do not think I was, no.
And you later said that you, or how did you feel afterwards, after you had realized what you had done?
I felt horrible. I was devastated.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Recross?
Yes, Your Honor. One moment.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, Your Honor. I would like to have
It has to be on the topic of the redirect, which is whether the defendant was in sound mind when he rode on the car.
Okay. No recross, Your Honor.
All right. Then the next defense witness.
The defense would like to call Taylor Perkins to the stand.
Okay.
One moment while I change my name.
You may.
May I proceed?
You may. Yes, you may.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Please state your name and spell your last name for the court.
Taylor Perkins, Perkins.
Where did you attend high school?
Colorado High School, and I'm currently a freshman at CU Boulder.
Did you participate in any extracurricular activities?
Yes.
Did you participate in mock trial with Avery Becker?
Yes, Avery's my best friend. She's the reason I did it. I would much rather be hanging out with friends after school, but since Avery did it, I decided that I would do it with her.
How would you describe Avery Becker as a teammate?
Avery had a different way of doing mock trial. She was very laid back, and she oftentimes just kind of went with the flow, and sometimes she wasn't as prepared for practice, but she was naturally good at mock trials, so it didn't matter.
Who is Mr. Brackman?
Mr. Brackman was our mock trial coach.
How would you describe Mr. Brackman as a mock trial coach?
Coach Brackman was a mediocre coach. I wouldn't say he was terrible. He still made our team good, but there was some disputes between Avery and Coach Brackman.
Was there ever a time when Avery was promoted to the B team?
Yes, they got in an argument and Avery was demoted. And so I decided to step down for the A team in support of her. And if she wasn't on the team, I didn't want to be on the team either because she was the reason I did mock trial.
Did Avery ever attempt to get back onto the A team? Oh, wait, excuse me. Let me rephrase that question. Was Avery ever let back onto the A team?
Yes, because I stepped down. They needed us both on there because we're a big part of the team. So he let us both back on.
Will you describe what happened after this?
We ended up, we went to regionals, and Avery ended up winning Best Attorney Award and Best Closing Argument. Closing argument after that.
How did Mr. Brackman respond to Avery winning these awards?
Unfortunately, Coach Brackman wasn't as supportive as we were hoping. Coach Brackman believed that Avery didn't deserve these awards and that she should not be awarded for her efforts because she wasn't as prepared, but she was still clearly had the awards to prove that she was good.
What did Avery do in response to these comments?
Avery was very frustrated and unfortunately ended up riding on Coach Brackman's Porsche with what she thought was an exo marker.
What happened as a result of this vandalism?
Unfortunately, the marker was actually permanent, and Coach Brackman got very frustrated with Avery and ended up kicking Avery off the mock trial team altogether.
Did Avery ever attempt to apologize to Mr. Brackman for her?
Yes, all the time. Avery is my best friend, and she was so sorry about what she did. She tried texting him, and she tried going in to talk to him, but Coach Brackman just wouldn't have it.
Did Avery ever attempt to get back on the team?
Yes, so she went in on Thursday, I believe, and went in to talk to Coach Brackman after practice, but unfortunately was turned away.
What happened after this?
Avery and I both went back to my house and we played some games, and then we ended up going to the Fry Shack, and it turned out that the rest of the team members also came.
Can you describe what happened at the Fry Shack on that day?
Yes, so I was talking with Avery and Alex, and Avery was saying how she was so sorry that Avery got kicked off the team, which was, I could tell that it wasn't meaningful, and it hurt Avery, and so Avery ended up storming off and left her phone on the counter in her frustration.
Who was the last person to use Avery's phone, at least to your knowledge, after Avery stormed off?
To my best knowledge, last person I saw was Alex, and Alex was playing a game on Avery's phone.
What were you and Avery doing on the day of March 6, 2020?
We were looking for Avery's phone. Avery had lost it, and so we had taken a lit quiz earlier in the week, so we decided that it's a pretty dry day, and so we would just spend the day looking for Avery's phone.
Now, were you with Avery for the whole of that day?
Yes, we usually drive to school together because we both have a first period release. So then when we drove it together, we just decided to retrace our steps. We went back to the mall because we had gone there the night before, and we also went back to the Fry Shack to check, but we couldn't find it.
And did Avery have her phone at all after the Fry Shack?
No, not to my understanding, no.
And did you or Avery ever go near Mr. Brackman's house that day?
Absolutely not. We didn't even know where Coach Brackman lived at the time.
Do you know Blair Rollins?
Kind of. Blair Rollins is a kid at our school. I don't know him super well, but he apparently, as said before, his dad was involved with the case with Coach Brackman.
And from your perspective, what is the relationship between Alex Cifuentes and Blair Rollins?
They're friends.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
You were on the mock trial team with Avery, correct?
Correct. Avery's my best friend.
All right. And moving forward, I would like you to answer in a yes or no format, please.
I will do so to my best of my ability.
You had a poor idea of Mr. Brackman as your coach. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say poor, but he wasn't the best coach. Mediocre, I would say.
Okay, thank you. And when Mr. Brackman demoted Avery to the B team, you quit mock trial, correct?
No, I stepped down to the B team with Avery.
You stepped down to the B team, just for clarification. You were saying that you stepped down instead of completely quitting mock trial.
Yes.
Your Honor, may I have a brief moment to confirm?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I bring up the witness's statement for purposes of impeachment?
Yes, you may.
Ms. Perkins, is this your signature right here?
Yes.
And did you prepare a statement for court today?
Yes.
And you signed here that you would change anything before the trial date?
Yes.
So moving on, I am going to be reading line 29 through 30 of your witness statement. So the week before regionals, even though I was a senior too, I decided to step down from the team in support of my friend. Mock trial meant more to Avery than it did to me, so it was a hard decision. I didn't really like mock trial that much. I didn't want to do it if if I didn't have friends on the team. That is your witness statement, correct?
Yes.
All right, and you again signed this statement saying that if anything changed, you would change it before the trial date today.
Correct. And I said that I stepped down from the team.
All right, thank you. Let the record reflect that this witness is now impeached.
Well, the jury will make that decision.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. No further questions, Your Honor.
Right? Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Taylor, is it correct? Actually, let me rephrase that. How do you respond to the opposing counsel's previous question of whether or not you stepped down from the 18?
Like I said before, it says in my witness statement that we just read, it says that I stepped down from the team in support of my friend.
Thank you. No further redirect.
Okay. Recross, it would have to be on this issue.
No recross, Your Honor.
All right. Next witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Blake Van Owen to the stand.
Okay. And you need to change from Ms. Flanagan. Okay. Vancouver.
All right. Good afternoon. Please state your first name and spell your last name for the record.
I am Professor Blake Van Owen, VANOWEN.
And Professor Van Owen, what is your profession?
I am a professor and a private investigator.
And what is the extent of your education in this field?
I have received my master's degree in criminal justice from the Ashford University.
How did your experience with law enforcement begin?
It began at my time at the Aurora Police Department in 2005 to 2006.
And how did that particular experience end?
It ended in an unfortunate way. I accidentally injured a woman of color due to a technique I used during her arrest.
And how did that incident end?
It ended with me leaving the police department, not because I was fired, but because I was disillusioned with a number of their practices and techniques.
And what did you do after that?
I went on to become a private security guard, a school resource officer, and now a professor and private investigator.
And what is your experience with testifying as an expert in court?
I have testified as an expert in over 100 cases regarding the areas of crime scene reconstruction, which I have testified over 8 times, cell tower analysis 5 times, and general police investigation tactics 12 times.
Your Honor, I move to admit Professor Blake Van Owen as an expert in police procedure with additional knowledge of general police investigation tactics.
Any objection?
May I have the opportunity to voir dire, please?
Think the rules discourage that, but I'll allow limited voir dire.
Okay. So, Professor Van Owen, when was the last time you took a class on what you teach?
Well, I graduated from Ashford University in 2014, and so
it's been, Your Honor, this witness has been out of school for 6 years. How could he stay in touch with the portion of what he's trying to be admitted into as?
I'm going to ask for a response by the defense.
The witness, even if the time frame in which the last time he took a class on the subject he teaches was significant enough for the knowledge to have to not be up to date, he has the other requirements under Rule 703 to be qualified as an expert.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I do think he's demonstrated sufficient education, training, or experience, and the weight to be given to his testimony is up to the jury. So you may proceed, and he may testify as an expert in the field you've identified.
So what brings you here today?
the murder of Mr. Mackenzie Bracken.
And have you been asked to offer any opinions on behalf of the defense?
I have. My opinions on behalf of the defense are that no one can prove to a reasonable degree that Mr. Bracken was stabbed in the midst of a struggle, but it is rather more likely that he was stabbed from behind, caught unaware. Secondly, no one can prove to a reasonable degree through sufficient evidence that Avery Becker's phone was at the residence of Mr. Mackenzie's Bracken house, and even if it did, it fails to prove that she herself was actually at the house. And finally, the prosecution's case is methodologically unsound.
All right, and let's start with the first one of those. Why was Bracken most likely stabbed from behind?
Well, in order for me to have come to that conclusion, I first looked at the form of the knife and the characteristics and attributes to the knife wound itself. Given that the suspect was able to stab all the way through the scapula and into the aorta, they would have had to have been much bigger than Mr. Bracken if they were fighting in the midst of a struggle. However, since the ring videos prove that the suspect was not that much bigger than Bracken, I can come to the conclusion that the suspect would have had to have stabbed from behind in a downward angle with the suspect unaware, or with the victim unaware.
And why does the cell phone tower data not accurately prove that Becker was at the crime scene?
Yes, so with a cell phone tower, they have a variety of ranges. In a rural area, a cell tower can cover up to 100 miles, while a cell tower in a urban area can cover from a 6 to 7 mile radius. And given this was in a urban area, we can piece the two together, and with further information that a cell phone can connect to multiple different cell towers, and it will not always connect to the cell tower that's closest. It's more likely that the cell phone will connect to the tower that has the strongest connection. And so given this, we have no idea to determine which cell phone which tower the cell phone connected to.
And why is the prosecution's case methodologically unsound?
Yes, I would consider it under my expert opinion for it to be methodologically unsound for a number of reasons. One being that they just blatantly accepted screenshots of Alex Cifuentes' phone. The problem with that is we have no idea if those screenshots were doctored. Mr. Cifuentes could have made up the contents on those with those screenshots for all we know. Second, the defense failed to look into other suspects regarding who else might have had a tie that would have gave them a motive to kill Mr. Mackenzie Brackman. And finally, the prosecution only subpoenaed the cell phone records for a limited amount of time. Given that, we have no idea where Mr. Becker's phone was before or after the time of death, leaving us to only make assumptions.
And what did you find, or did you do any investigation into an alternate suspect?
I did. Upon investigating into Blair Rowlands, I found, under my expert opinion, that he had quite a larger motive to kill Mr. Mackenzie Brackman than Avery Becker did.
And what is that motive?
Well, his dad was being represented by Mr. Mackenzie Brackman and was convicted of murder. And I'm pretty sure that when someone's dad is convicted of murder and your dad's being represented by a man who failed to have them not guilty of murder, that would be a pretty big motive.
You're under permission to show what has been marked as Exhibit 22.
Me.
Do you recognize this link?
I do.
And what is it?
It is an audio recording from Jonathan Rowland's court proceeding.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 22 into evidence.
People's position.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. And I have another one. Objection to truth of the matter. Hearsay.
All right, the jury will evaluate truth, but relevance and hearsay, your response, counsel?
For hearsay, under Rule 703, an expert can use anything anything as part of their testimony, and including hearsay. And relevance, it goes to show the motive of an alternate suspect, Blair Rowlands.
And you may reply.
Oh, no, Your Honor. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Bear with me a moment. Not only was I technologically challenged today, but my copy of the mock court rules of evidence are scrambled. So let me find Rule 703 in the pursuant to the mock court rules. I'm going to overrule the objection. Experts do have broader latitude if hearsay is to be considered, and I do believe that they've satisfied the relevance, so the objection's overruled. You may show you may play Exhibit 21.
Thank you, Your Honor. Trial technician, would you play this clip? Try it again.
I do. I'll get you back, Brackman, if it's the last thing I do.
Okay, thank you.
Good, Nigel.
All right, so what does that clip, what's the significance of that clip?
It's significant as it shows that someone else besides Avery Becker is wanting to get back at Mr. Brackman. And given that this was from a trial where a man was being sent to prison for murder, I would say it has a very high probability that this person would have had to have much larger motive to kill Mr. Brackman.
And so in your opinion as an expert, what are your conclusions about this case?
My conclusions are that the prosecution's case is rushed and that they came to an easy conclusion. And because of that, we cannot say for certain that Mr. Avery Becker committed the murder of Mr. Mackenzie Brackman.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. So, may I proceed?
Yes.
Detective Van Allen. So, before you were a professor and detective, you worked at the Aurora Police Department as a police officer, correct?
I did.
And you had injured a woman of color during your time there.
Yes, and I feel so bad for it.
So, you left the department?
Yes, because I was disillusioned with a number of their practices.
Please answer these next few questions in a yes or no format.
I'll try my best.
You left because of not agreeing with the police practices, correct?
Correct.
You were cleared of wrongdoing by the government, but you still felt guilty because it was unethical.
Correct.
The young woman eventually sued you and the company, correct?
Yes, she sued me.
And you and the woman reached an agreed settlement?
We did, but I cannot disclose that settlement.
Thank you. Let's transition into the investigation. You worked with other people in this courtroom, correct?
I do, from previous cases and conferences.
So you can say that Kyle Kuzak and Detective Markowitz worked together?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Right. Redirect, again, needs to be focused on what the areas of cross-examination were.
Yes, briefly.
Go ahead.
You left the police department because you believed that, or let me rephrase that. Why specifically did you leave the police department?
Because I was disillusioned with a number of its procedures, practices, and techniques using during arrests and other times.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect would, recross would have to be only on that very specific question and answer. Do you have any recross?
Yes, Your Honor. Very brief. you still felt guilty because of what you did was unethical?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, out of scope of the redirect.
Overruled. All right. So I think we are ready for closing arguments, correct?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense rests.
Okay. Then people may proceed.
Your Honor, may I have a brief moment to reposition everything?
Yes, yes, you may.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor?
You may proceed.
May it please the court. Thank you, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. Thank you for taking the time to listen to all the proof of Avery Becker's guilt. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start with the fact that no, Avery Becker is not someone who will kill someone because she's mad at them. No, she will kill them after panicking while trashing their house because she's mad or upset with them. It started with the defendant storming out of the mock trial practice because they were mad at Coach Brackman and rode on his car for the same reason. And no matter whether or not the defendant thought it was dry erase, they still intended to cause damage to the car from anger or being upset, which is what caused the first act of vandalism. And that's what they did. That's what they did to Brackman's house too. And the defendant has also agreed that vandalism on a house is the same, is vandalism just like a car. Coach Brackman just got in the way this time. During this trial, you have heard from Detective Jordan Markowitz, Kyle Kuzak, and Alexa Fuentes on the prosecution side, and Avery Becker, Taylor Perkins, and Blake Van Owen on the defense side. Now, Detective Jordan Markowitz was able to trace the records of Avery Becker, of the defendant's phone, on an optimal route from their house to the coach's house. And the defendant also originally ended up denying that they vandalized the property during the cross of them. When in their statement, they clearly stated that they vandalized the car. And then Taylor, during her cross as well, stated that she only stepped down from the A team when she stepped down from the whole team. Given all this considered, we ask for a conviction of guilty of Avery Becker for the murder of Coach Brackman and second-degree burglary. The prosecution rests, Your Honor.
Defense closing.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
The feeling of blame, the weight that one carries on their shoulders when this feeling is forced upon them, can be frustrating and maddening. That kind of pressure is hard enough. But it is also almost impossible to imagine those feelings magnified to a level that we find ourselves in today. Jurist William Blackstone once said, "It is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one suffer." Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, opposing counsel, today you have heard from the prosecution, who have impatiently jumped to the conclusion that Avery Becker is the one with full responsibility for the death of former mock trial coach Mackenzie Brackman. Detective Markowitz first fell short and failed to check alternative leads and therefore was exclusive on her investigation of the murder of Mr. Brackman, falling short of doing a complete investigation. The next witness from the prosecution with inadequacy was Kyle Kuzak, who admittedly would have preferred more evidence than was given to him in order to be 100% sure of his findings. Even with that, some of Some of his findings were discovered to be later corrupted after his analysis of them. Again, it is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one suffer. Now about Alex Cifuentes and the alleged texts that they received from Avery. Even though Avery said Alex would be the absolute last person she would contact. This incompetence and dishonor should by itself be enough to prove the defendant's innocence. But there is still more. Why don't we listen to the people who really knew Brackman the best, who knew Avery the best? Those people would have to be Avery Becker and Taylor Perkins. Avery Becker, a competitive student who, just like many other students, share Avery's passion in mock trial. Sure, Avery had a little emotional breakdown when she was kicked completely off the team, but in her later actions, she had no bad intentions when she wrote on her coach's car with what she believed was a dry erase marker. Connecting this with murder is completely absurd and should never have happened in the first place. All the emotions aside, Avery has presented valid evidence as well as even an alibi to prove that she was in no way responsible for the break-in and death of her own mock trial teacher, Mackenzie Brackman. From her loyal best friend, Taylor Perkins, who was with Avery the whole time during these events, has shown us that the claim of an alibi provided by Miss Becker is true and provided evidence that Avery did not have possession of her phone during the period of time in which the alleged text messages were sent to Alex Cifuentes. And finally, from the expert Blake Van Owen, who covered up all the loose ends that Markowitz missed, such as the additional idea of an alternate suspect, and he even addressed the idea that the knife could possibly not have been from Brackman's house, but from the intruder. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today you are faced with an important decision. A decision that will determine the future of an innocent student. I want to restate that the defendant is innocent until proven guilty. And with all you have seen today and all you've heard today, the evidence provided by the prosecution was nowhere near the adequate amount needed to convict the defendant, Avery Becker, of the murder of her former mock trial teacher, Mackenzie Brackman. Thank you.
I'm not certain if the people have any additional time left, or if there is permission for rebuttal do you wish to respond to anything that was in the defense closing argument, if you have any remaining time?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, that may be the rule anyhow. I apologize. All right, that concludes this case, and it's in the hands of the jury. So, again, I apologize for our late start and our therefore late finish. And I think we need to give some time for the scorers to process their thoughts and the sort. But you folks did very well across the board. Witnesses, lawyers, people thought well on their feet on the objections to evidence. You responded well when you got answers to questions or cross-examination that you weren't anticipating, and demonstrated that you all have worked very hard on this, and I commend you all for that. So any other comments from others at this time, or some of the scoring folks want to make some observations?
Yes, Judge Patrick, if you have just a minute.
Sure.
So I thought, I agree with Your Honor, that was a very good round, especially some of the objections. Just in the future, be careful. The judge admonished one of you with these speaking objections, or where you say, I object because if you testify to that, the jury's going to find my client guilty. I'm joking, of course, but the issues of fact go to the jury. These are issues of evidence. So hearsay, the speaking objection, I get in trouble for that too. Is sometimes, you have a reason, objection hearsay, objection relevance, objection asked and answered, and then you can talk a little bit. But if you just sort of ramble a little bit, I thought the openings and closings were good. Although for the prosecution, no matter what, and I know there's some time limits here, but you are entitled to do a rebuttal close. So always, as a prosecutor, the greatest thing ever is that you get the last word. So you always want to do that. And even if you reserve a minute or you have a minute and a half left or 30 seconds, just get up there and we proved our case beyond a reasonable doubt, blah, blah, blah. Witnesses, I thought were really, really good. Good job. I've just heard this case today for the first time, but I'm always like shocked at how good the witness, like, wait a minute, that's the officer, that's the defendant. Let me just look at my score sheet real quick. Like Burnberry, I thought just like the first defense witness, really, really good. Like, I'm sympathetic. I may have found you not guilty. So other than that, thank you guys very much. I know you work hard all year, and thank you coaches and Tammy and everyone.
Din, do you have any comments?
Well, I think you all should get extra kudos for dealing with the fact that you didn't get off the tee box right when you expected. I know what that's like. I'm not pointing
really
any fingers.
apologize.
I'm not pointing any fingers. No.
Even though I started emailing Lance and Sam at about 12:10.
No, but for all the students doing that, I know and especially because most of you, I think, had worked this morning and were really ready to do it, and you did it with grace, and you did the whole thing very, very admirably. I guess what I really want to say is, if any of you are ever thinking that, oh, today was really a rough day, it was like, no, you did a great job. And if you want to be lawyers, please, please, please do. Our profession could really deal with having some new good blood like yours. Congratulations to all of you.
Hi. I have just a couple of remarks. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm just always so impressed by the students and how well you present yourselves and how professional you are and how bright you are. It truly is impressive. There's a couple of things in particular, and some of you may be going on to the next rounds and or coming back next year. Hopefully it won't be Zoom time next year, but a few things to keep in mind when you're doing this. Try to sit still. I know it's hard when you're in a swivelly chair to just sit still, but it's very distracting. And if a jury was watching you, and right now a lot of courtroom proceedings are going on via Zoom, and so lawyers are trying to look professional while still being in their own offices and what have you. So it's tough, and also kind of set the scene to the extent you can. I know you're in classrooms or home or whatever. Look behind you and see what's showing up back there as well. Just kind of, it's the whole big ball of professionalism that kind of helps make you look like you really have got it going on, both for for everybody who's, tested out before you sit down to compete, and look at what's happening behind you on the screen. The defense had a good, solid opening. I really appreciated that. Plaintiff's cross-examination of the defendant, they're a little too bogged down in the vandalism of the car. It was kind of okay, so what? Trying to get the witness to admit that they coulda, woulda, shoulda known that was going to do permanent damage. And Tess, you did a very nice job with the cross-examination using the witness statement on your cross. And witness Joel told a very nice, very good story, stayed on track, knew the facts, and stood up very well. That was really impressive as well. And then the last thing I just want to mention is I go to court and I read stuff. Too bad. I'm not going to try to memorize it. I'm not going to take a chance that I forget a key point in something that could be the difference between winning and losing for my client. And so, yeah, I go to court and I read, and it's not the greatest thing, but it's also not the end of the world. But when you're doing these kinds of things, and in particular, your openings and your closings, if you can't memorize it, and if you don't have the time to really make a performance out of it, at least try to memorize the last things that you're going to say, the last paragraph that you're going to say, and then get off of your piece of paper, get your eyes off of down here and right into the camera or into whoever you're talking to, and at least lay down that last little paragraph directly to, and it'll be much more effective that way. But excellent job, everybody, and so much fun for me. Thanks for doing this. And I'm gonna go back and add up your scores.
So this is always dangerous, but any questions that the participants have for, you have two judges at least. Judge Din Tuttle is also a judge. Or any of the comments that you received from any of the other scorers. Or you can say, thank goodness this is done and I want to go home now. I understand that fully too. And I'm very apologetic for causing all of us to be here a half an hour more than we thought. I was trying, but there was a technological glitch that we still haven't fully figured out. The leading theory is that my Zoom defaults automatically to the Zoom personal room I have for Western, where I teach a class, and my computer didn't believe I was trying to go to another Zoom meeting, and it just would not give up that I was teaching constitutional law and had 35 students in Zoom. But I apologize. And great job, and good luck.